What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this awesome Switch 2 update video, we have a developer who is claiming that they know what Nintendo is requiring from developers to actually get dev kits and what certain features are in the Switch 2, including DLSS and what version it's using. But is there more than meets the eye here with this information? We're going to find out. Plus, we have an interesting update with Digital Foundry and a flip-flop, so to speak, of where their stance is, possibly, and a big change in their company. We will discuss that, and yet another example of a Switch 2 game that looks better than Xbox Series S, a port that is, in certain aspects. So if you do enjoy this content, guys, please hit the like button and subscribe for more, and we will get started. So first off, this developer, what's going on with Switch 2 here and releasing information about dev kit requirements? Well, yeah, there's some information going on about this. Let's take a look. So WCCF Tech did an article talking about Nintendo Switch 2 dev kit access requires games to show the system's unique features, support 4K 60 frames per second, or up to 120 frames per second at 1440p resolution in dock mode or more, and DLSS version seemingly confirmed. Okay. Let's see what they say here. And shout outs to DocTray81. He posted this information first. This is a summary of that information, but you will have links to this all in the description if you're interested in seeing his video and of course this information as well. But there's some interesting things here we got to look at. So WCCF Tech and other sites have reviewed this information, and they bring out that basically they talk about how Nintendo is requiring certain aspects to be provided to them before they give developers dev kits. Simply porting over a game from the original system or any format does not automatically grant publishing rights on the new system, as every game, even from existing partners, must be individually approved, with approval only being given to games that showcase the capabilities of the systems by taking advantage of its features, including 4K support, 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second at 1440p, docked mode, game chat, mouse controls, HD Rumble 2, and game share, and more. So again, I'm not gonna sit here and say that I know 100% for sure that this is fake or fact, or basically I'm gonna give you my opinion. But a lot of this stuff we've already not seen from developers who've released games on Switch 2, including Cyberpunk 2077, which runs at 1080p and 30 frames per second in docked mode on Switch 2. It does not run, it doesn't really support 4K, like upscaling for that game. It's being output at 4K, but every game on Switch 2 that runs on the console outputs at 4K on your display, has it in the settings. It has nothing to do with developers supporting 4K resolution. The system automatically will run that. So this requirement looks kind of odd that they would say that, but we're going to take a look at this first, and then we'll discuss some of my, questions here. It says, besides revealing the above details regarding DevKit access, Linux Byte, I guess they're called Linux Byte games, also revealed that the Switch 2 seemingly supports DLSS 3.1, although the version number nowadays doesn't mean a whole lot, given the different components of the upscaler such as super resolution and frame generation, which are not necessarily supported at all times. It was being speculated the system used some lightweight version of NVIDIA's tech with no direct correspondence to the different version of DLSS seen in countless PC games, so on and so forth. So DLSS 3.1, again, none of this information right here has been confirmed by Nintendo or any other actual developer. And it's questionable because we do know, just from the look of how these games that do support DLSS, like Fast Fusion, for example, their version of DLSS they use is definitely not the same visually. You can tell right off the bat. It's using a very much low quality version of DLSS. And according to Nintendo's own patents, we know that the Switch 2 is going to support very, very performant DLSS or high cost DLSS in terms of performance of what it takes for the console to run it. So just saying that DLSS 3.1 is what it supports, that doesn't seem right off the bat. From what the information we know from what the information is out there about the Switch 2, and from the actual visual proof that we've seen, and from the actual patents that Nintendo has filed. So another question is how come a lot of these sites that post this information, I've said this a million times, this is basically why I do videos in the first place. I question why these sites who post this information, or even YouTubers who post information, don't actually look into the developers who are saying this stuff, like, looking into their history. Because when you look into their history, this Linux Byte Games, you don't see too much there. Now, I'm going to cover this up a little bit here for privacy information. So, because we have to go on LinkedIn here. So, as you know, Dr. A gets all his, cool stuff from LinkedIn. Like I said, nothing wrong with what he posted. This is good. But I'm questioning some things about this developer here, and you'll see why. So if we go down to this history of Linux Byte Games, if I can say their name right, but basically if we go down to when they first posted on LinkedIn 5 months ago, they said, "We are thrilled to announce that as of beginning of March, Linux Byte Games has officially become a simple joint stock company. Our goals have remained unchanged. We are fully committed to our mission of helping developers publish their games on consoles more easily and without unnecessary costs. We're not slowing down." So that sounds good, right? No mention of Switch 2. And then 1 month ago, they had another post here. Gamescom is just around the corner. Yes, we'll be there. And then if you go up a little bit, 4 weeks ago, 9 essential steps to port your games on consoles. Thinking about launching your game on consoles and reaching over 86.7 billion players? What? Wait. 86.7 billion players. How big is the Earth's population? I thought the Earth's population was about 7 to 8 billion? Okay. Obviously, something's wrong there. You're in the right place. This is the most practical and detailed guide you'll find online, written by people who do this every day. No fluff, just real steps you can follow 100% to get you started. Okay. And they have this slideshow of pictures here. Update your game engine, console approved version, SDK, Nintendo. They don't say Switch 2 here, they say Nintendo. Optimize your game for console hardware. This is what they can do for you. For 86 billion people, by the way. Yeah. Crossplay, all that stuff. They can do all this stuff. Amazing. Okay, now here's the big one. 2 weeks ago, they have no history. There's no games. There's nothing. I've looked these guys up. They have done nothing. They're brand spanking new. They're trying to get noticed. So 2 weeks ago, here's their first, step to trying to get noticed, right? Nintendo Switch 2. The biggest opportunity in 2025 to boost your game sales. The newest Nintendo platform, Nintendo Switch 2, they're talking about, has already sold over 130 million units globally within just weeks of its release. Creating a massive opportunity to successfully increase your game's reach and revenue. With new features, updated technical requirements, and tighter restrictions on dev kit access, adapting early is critical. Check out our latest article to learn what sets the next generation Nintendo consoles apart and how to prepare your game for success. The next generation Nintendo consoles? Yeah. It's like obviously, I mean, are they using AI to make this or something? What is going on here? This is not professional at all. And you want to get noticed typing stuff that is just incorrect? Okay. Nintendo Switch 2, by the way, what developer would take them seriously just by looking at this? I'm not talking about fans or people just making YouTube videos who notice, oh, this is a developer who says stuff about Switch 2, oh my gosh. But an actual developer that actually looks at their history, who would actually do business with these guys just from face value here? They're very low quality. You can they're not paying attention already to what they're even typing. If this is even real, like a real person typing this, we don't know. Seems like almost like an AI type of mistake there. Big sales opportunity. Yeah, sure. All right, here's where they posted in a screenshot. DLSS, the unique features of Switch 2, DLSS 3.1, ray tracing, 4K HDR, TV. Okay, 120 hertz handheld game chat, voice video, new Joy-Cons with mouse mode, improved sticks, Pro controller with extra buttons plus jack. Okay. They don't say, just jack. Okay. The Pro controller has jack. Full backwards compatibility, Bluetooth 5.1, Wi-Fi 6, dock HDMI 2.1, which I believe it's been confirmed it's HDMI 2.0, right? Not 2.1, so I think that's a mistake. In their actual screenshot. LAN, it has LAN, okay. I guess the Switch 2 doesn't have Ethernet, huh? It has LAN? Okay. So we're going back to the GameCube era, pretty much. We're gonna have to buy the 56K modem separately. USB-C cam, micro SD express. Okay, wow. Yeah, and the basic stuff. Tegra chip. So the Switch 1 had a Tegra chip. Good. Switch 2 has an NVIDIA chip. Okay, good. Yeah, you really. Well, yeah. What is the use? There's any developer that looks this up on their page this would be of no use to them whatsoever. There's nothing here. Anybody who knows this stuff, anything about Switch 2, who's interested in making games out of it, they already know this stuff. Like what is this? Like for people who are just barely are going to college to make games or something, maybe they don't know anything about. Like this is weird stuff, in my opinion. Hey, what do I know? But it just looks really sketchy to me. Unity and Unreal Engine. Okay, great. So, okay. Access to dev kits highly restricted by Nintendo at the moment. It's not possible to freely apply for dev kits, but we can assist you with the process. Wink, wink. Oh, yeah, okay. Wow. So they posted this 2 weeks ago, and then they posted it in Word format. They're trying to get people's attention here in big letters, all caps. And now it's finally getting somebody's attention in form of the YouTube video by Doc Trey. And like I said, he may have only looked at this first part because, you look at their profile and it looks like they might be, someone legit. But when you actually look at their posting history and their lack of experience and even just posting information about Switch 2 or just gaming in general, and having no games whatsoever under their portfolio, maybe, just my guess, I could be 100% wrong, but maybe, just maybe, these guys are simply trying to put their foot forward and get noticed, and they may not even know much about the Switch 2, and they're saying this information to get people to actually work with them so they could help them make money and, get work. And these guys, it says they have 11 to 50 employees, but if you look at their page, they only have like 4 people, I think, connected to them. So I don't know, man. This looks pretty sketchy to me. I wouldn't necessarily take this as fact. I would take this with a large grain of salt if I were you. But like I said, let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you believe this? This looks just very suspect to me. My gut instinct is that this is kind of scammy and not legit, that they would know this information, and especially since some of the information is useless and just flat out incorrect about the Switch 2 that they're posting. I would take this with gigantic grains of salt. Like I said, personally, I don't really believe them. But hey, good luck to them, and hopefully they get some work. I don't doubt that they're a real company. That looks like they have a real website, but if we go over to their website here, they do have an actual website, but this is very basic stuff. It looks like a startup company that just began working a few months ago. Literally, that's pretty much what they did. But yeah, moving on. Digital Foundry recently actually moved away from IGN, and now they are independent. And they announced this just like a week ago or so. And as you know, we've been talking about Digital Foundries and their takes on the Switch 2 and how they've had some contradictions in what they've said about what the Switch 2 can do, what it can't do, and then it would seem to be go back and forth. And here we are yet again, right after they've become independent now. Maybe they are turning a new leaf on Switch 2, because this sounds really positive now. And all of a sudden, we're hearing them say some things that may be admitting that they were wrong without saying so. Here, let's take a look at what they say here real quick.
Yeah, a couple of games released this week which we weren't able to take a look at. I guess Mafia, the old country, just didn't receive a review code for some reason. We'll be taking a look at that when we can. Another game that did come out, Apex Legends on Switch 2, which looks quite intriguing, right, Oliver?
It does. And this is a game that actually surprised me quite a bit in terms of its quality this week. So I'm quite happy to talk about it here in this direct. So if we compare...
I always love how these guys are so surprised by anything that Switch 2 does that looks impressive. They're extremely shocked. It's like, oh my gosh.
Switch 2 version, the Switch 1 version here. The first thing that stands out is there's like a huge improvement in image.
All right, we're going to skip the Switch 1 comparison. We're going to go right to Xbox Series S. That's what we want to see.
Performing too well at all times there. Switch 2 is nearly a lock 60 FPS in comparison. The only exceptions are like at the beginning of the match, it would drop down to like, the 40s and 50s, nothing too bad. There'd be some one-off frame drops during matches as well, but nothing too bad at all. It was generally a lock 60 FPS, which is really important, obviously, in that docked output. Compared to Series S, I was even more surprised when I looked at Series S, because it looks very similar to Series S. The biggest visual difference by far has got nothing to do with the game settings, it's just a difference in gamma. So the Switch 2 version is a little bit lighter for whatever reason, and if you darken those shadows in post-production, you can actually...
Yeah, it looks almost identical to Series S. There are some differences he brings out here. See what he says.
More, which is a little bit of a weird difference that we saw, I think, in the original Switch version as well. It's a little bit lighter than the existing home console versions.
Let's make this full screen so we can see it better.
The game. There's some cutbacks on Switch 2, like there's less ground clutter, shadow resolution's lower, shadow pop-in's a little bit worse. Nothing too major here, and a lot of...
Yeah, so if you recall, they said recently, just like a couple weeks ago, like less than a month ago, that the Series S was not just a little bit more powerful than Switch 2, but like substantially so, like quite a bit more powerful. And here it's like, it looks almost the same as Series S. There's some cutbacks, like a little bit less geometry here. As you may or may not know, a CPU needs to draw more geometry for the GPU to render, likely stuff like that, and drawing, lower quality shadows. All those things are related somewhat to the CPU, and of course hitting 60 frames per second in an open world environment like this. Very impressive so far.
It's very similar, like pop in for geometry, pop in for models is quite similar. So there are a couple cutbacks, but I think the key change here comes down to image quality, where Switch 2 is just doing a much better job of actually resolving a clean and stable 1080p-like image. Both consoles are 1080p 60. The Series S also counts to 1080p, but the Switch 2 is just running a lot better here, looking a lot better in that 1080p 60 mode. The Series S also has a 120 hertz mode that I didn't have time to test that compromise.
Yeah, so yet again, Switch 2 has a better image quality than the Xbox Series S at 1080p, because like we've been talking about with DLSS, a lot of times with high quality DLSS, you're going to be getting games that are output at a native resolution that actually look better than the native resolution. DLSS does a better job at smoothing out jagged edges than not using DLSS, like FSR, for example.
Rises a little bit more in resolution. And the Switch 2, in terms of 120 hertz support, it does not have any 120 hertz support whatsoever. So it's just a 60 hertz output only game. I also looked briefly at portable mode, and it runs really well at 60 FPS there.
Okay. Let's see what they say here. So like in summary about Switch 2's performance, this is interesting.
Series S is running a more demanding set of settings, obviously, but Switch 2 is arguably the preferable platform, at least in that 60 hertz mode, because it is pulling off much better image quality along a number of axes with the use of DLSS. And I'm really pleased here. So I think this is a case where they're going back to a game that is a little bit older. Apex is a 6-year-old game. It's obviously based on the very, very old Source engine at this point. So maybe it's not the best barometer for the application of, current gen rendering tech necessarily, but it does look a lot better on Switch 2 than I think it has any right to realistically, considering what they're trying to pull off here. It's quite impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what was the
Yeah, so yeah, here's where they watch what Richard says here. It's just funny.
the Series S versus Switch 2 pixel counts in the docked mode?
1080p flat on both. Now, of course, it's possible, and indeed probably likely based on the pedigree of the other versions, the Switch 2 version might have DRS here, and that might be more aggressive than other versions, right? That's entirely possible here. But in terms of the pixel count, both were coming out at native 1080p.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the great thing about when a new console comes along, getting to grips with what it's actually capable of, because obviously in the pre-release period, you've got access to limited media, and you've got, leaked specs, leaked developer documentation, that kind of thing. But at the same time, it's like, well, you don't really know what these things are truly capable of until you actually get shipping software in your hands. And that's where some surprises come up, right? I mean, obviously, going back in the day to like 2020, we were expecting the Series X to outperform the PlayStation 5 based on the specifications that were released. But it actually turns out there's a lot more to a console than just, how many compute units or it's got or its core clock frequency. There's particularly...
This isn't that what they were? I thought they were saying this, but like it's so ridiculous. Like this kind of stuff, like they briefly said stuff like this months ago as well. Like we won't really know until we see the games in action. But then they went ahead and said what to expect from it anyway, and that was a whole problem with these guys since the beginning. Telling you that you're going to be expecting a PS4 level performance, and then even saying it was outright, seeing like these previews of games when they weren't even using the PS5 as a comparison, when it was actually looking like PS5 like assets in a lot of these games. They still were saying no, it's like PS4, and now they're saying, oh, it turns out you don't really know what you're getting until you see the actual games. Well, yeah, that's what we've been saying since the beginning. You can't judge these things on raw specs and like using these makeshift PCs basically, and saying like, this is what you're going to get. Here's our makeshift PC that it has the same compute units and same level of GPU. It's going to run all choppy and look, it's not going to be able to do, DLSS at 4K. All those things have been proven wrong already for Switch 2. We already have games using DLSS upscaling to 4K. Fast Fusion is one of them. We have games that look better than the Xbox Series S in certain aspects like textures and image quality. We have Apex Legends now that joins the fray, Street Fighter 6, Cyberpunk 2077. All those games have better image quality and, in some cases, better textures than Xbox Series S does. And continually, these guys keep having to backtrack, and it's weird though, but like they seem really positive on the Switch 2 right now. In this video, a lot of people speculated that maybe they were being influenced about what they could and couldn't say from IGN. You never know, but I don't really think so. I think they're just having to experience what it's like seeing these games in action for themselves for Switch 2. And I do think they were 100% wrong in their opinions and judgments even. And I think that was a huge mistake that they've been making for months now, is prejudging the Switch 2 and then being so surprised each time. So many surprises. Well, it's not surprising, because if you just would have put two and two together, that a closed box system, with specs that were on par with what they were showing in a closed box system for Switch 2 would outperform those specs quite a bit for developers who optimize for the console. So I'm not surprised whatsoever by these results. I expected the Switch 2 ports, a lot of them, to look very similar or close, or sometimes even better than Xbox Series S. I've been saying this since before even the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct in April. I've been saying it since last year. So yes, no surprises whatsoever for me, guys. But let me know what you think about this. Is this a turn or flip-flop by Digital Foundry, or do you think they're just starting to realize that their assumptions were wrong the entire time? Let me know what you think. Thanks so much for watching, and hope you enjoyed this. I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.